Between the ages of 2 and 5, my family lived in a house that a family friend was renting out. It was a nice house, with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a big kitchen. The whole package deal was for only $250 a month, and that included the utilities. We were told that when we moved in that there was only 2 floors, the ground floor and the upstairs floor, where the bedroom was. I remember when we first moved in and I was exploring the backyard, I saw a window down at the very bottom of the house. For some reason, it had unnerved me so badly I immediately burst into tears. I can't remember the exact reason, and since my parents couldn't get me to explain what had spooked me, they simply took me inside to calm down. The window was a source of fear and unease for me until we moved out when I was 5. My parents assumed that I would grow out of it, and that I did, but not until we moved out. I could never place why it creeped me out so badly, but I avoided that part of the yard like the plague. My most vivid memory of my childhood happened in this house. I had been asleep in bed one night when a strange thump from downstairs woke me up. I've always been a light sleeper, but I fell back asleep far too quickly for the thud to really make any difference. I woke up again to a heavy, awkward breathing in my ear and someone kneeling next to my bed. When I opened my eyes, I saw the pale, thin face of a man peering back at me, and I screamed. He booked it, and my parents brushed it off as a nightmare, but let me sleep in their room for the rest of the night. A week later, my 13-year-old sister woke everyone in the house by screaming at the top of her lungs. She claimed that she woke up to a man matching the one I had seen crawling into her bed. She described his breathing exactly as I remembered it, causing me to burst into tears. My parents were not pleased, and my sister and I slept in their room. The food disappeared really quickly. Mum always just said that it was having 2 growing children and my dad in the house. Sometimes things would be moved from where we had left them the night before, but that was also brushed off. My sister assumed the house was haunted, and my parents assumed she was just being paranoid. For the next couple of years, this continued on. The food disappeared, things were moved, and we occasionally had nightmares about that same strange man. When we tried to convince our parents that we weren't just dreaming, they brushed us off and insisted we were. This obviously caused a lot of tension between my sister and my parents. The night of my sister's 16th birthday came the encounter that brought us about the end of our stay there. My sister woke us again, screaming at the top of her lungs, but it cut off too quickly to be normal. My parents, concerned, went to go check on my sister and found a strange man in dirty clothing pinning her down and covering her mouth with his hand. A fight broke out between the man and my dad, but the man was nearly 72 and weak from starvation. It didn't last long, and soon enough the man was subdued and the cops were called. My mum kept my sister and me in the living room while the cops checked the house for more people and signs of the man breaking in. Instead, they found a door leading into an unfinished basement when closed. It blended in with the wall just enough that unless you knew it was there, you would never see it. We had never even noticed it, and apparently the family friend who owned the house hadn't even known about it either. The one little room was full of pictures of my sister and me in the yard, taken from that basement window. The reason I'd always been so frightened by that window came to light. The man had been taking photos of me and my sister for many years. That first day, I must have seen some flash of some kind, or maybe the man himself. The man was mentally unstable and claimed that he was in love with my sister and that I was their perfect daughter. He also claimed that since my sister was now 16, that she was old enough to give him another child. I'm not certain what happened, but I do think that he was sent to an asylum and then prison. Out of the many messed up things to happen to me over my life, this one takes the cake. This story took place just 2 weeks ago. I've always had a fear of basements since I was a kid, but now that I'm 18, my fear is obviously subdued a little bit. But I still will glance over my shoulder to any noise I may hear behind me, and I might get that slight butterfly in my stomach feeling when I'm alone. Well, on this cold Friday night, I was home alone, and since our biggest TV is in the basement, That's where I usually chill, especially to play video games. I was playing Fortnite with my friends, some crazy popular first-person shooter game, and I had headphones in and I was really invested in the game. Yet even over the loud sound effects through the headphones, I knew I heard something come from behind me. I took off my headphones and examined the back of the basement. Now, our basement is huge, but also extremely cluttered and messy. If I wanted to actually thoroughly examine what's behind me, I'd have to get up. That's how bad it is. But I didn't feel that was necessary. Yeah, I found it unsettling anytime I heard a noise, but I really didn't think it was anything to be concerned about. However, I wasn't able to give my full focus anymore, not with the part of me constantly thinking about the noise. I took off the headphones and played with them off just because I was feeling extra paranoid and wanted to hear my surroundings. Shortly after taking off the headset, there was a sudden clank sound, and it had a metallic, echoey ringing to it. I turned off the system, now because I was in shock. This was an intentional sound made by someone or something. I walked really slowly to the backside of the basement when I laid eyes on the big metal air vents in the corner. That's when it hit me, that was most likely the source of the sound. I got as close as I felt comfortable, then stopped and just looked at the air vent for a second. I got a terrible, painful feeling in my stomach, and I felt like my life was literally being drained out of me. When I saw a hand reach out from the air vent and started waving me over. Then a deep, raspy voice said, "Come here, please, I need help." At first, I didn't run, I just gradually stepped back with my mouth hung open, looking at the vents. The person's hands gripped the vent and started shaking at it aggressively, obviously trying to break it open. I screamed, "I'm calling the cops," but the shaking didn't stop. I did what I said. I called the cops and told them to send someone right away. The operator told me to go to a room upstairs with a weapon, lock the door and hide. I was the most scared I'd ever been in my entire life, and the pain and fear of the situation only became worse when I heard a door bust open downstairs, and I could hear a maniac screaming at the top of his lungs. I'm not lying when I said he was screaming things like, "Where are you? I'm going to kill you." I heard him run up the stairs. He probably ran up 2 stairs for every step, because he was up the stairs in like 3 seconds. My heart was in my throat when he tried the doorknob to the door and started pounding on it so hard I could see the door caving in a little bit. I thought he was actually going to break the door down, and so I had to climb out the window or I'd be a goner. I think he heard me though, because the banging abruptly stopped. I jumped from the window to the bushes below, and with the right stroke of luck, a cop car pulled up in front of my house. I basically ran into the officer's arms, begging them to go inside and get that man. They told me to wait in the police car, which they locked, while they both went inside with their guns drawn. Not even 5 minutes later, the 2 officers come out and they held the man in cuffs. The man in cuffs took my place in the back seat of the cop car, and from that moment until the cops drove away, he was giving me the most evil, hatred-filled stare you could ever imagine. That stare still haunts me. The whole experience still haunts me. I still hang out in the basement occasionally, but nowhere near as much as I used to. Had a weird day at work today, and I'd rather nobody make any type of connections when reading this. A little backstory. I work at a smallish insurance company. I've been there for a few years now. That is one half of a single-story building we share, the other half with a mum and pop clothing store. My salary is entirely commission-based, so I'm usually at the office working overtime. Sometimes not even getting out until 10 or 11 at night. The long hours stink, but I make decent enough money, so I don't mind it too much. I say this because last night was another late night. Everyone had already left by around 8, leaving just me and my close friend. My friend and I started working here the same day, and we instantly hit it off. We kind of stuck together ever since. It makes the nights go by faster, so we try and coordinate our overtime hours so at least we have some company. At around 10:30 we started packing up our things to leave, maybe head to the bar and get a beer and a bite to eat. On our way out to the door, we heard a loud buzzing noise, almost like a ringing alarm, coming from the building's basement. 3 years of working in the building, and the two of us have never heard that sound before. It was a continuous ringing buzz with no pauses or stops. It almost sounded like a mechanical failure warning that you would hear in a big warehouse or something to that degree. Just a really eerie sound. Since my friend and I were the only two left in the building, we went downstairs just to check it out. We've both been in the basement a few times before, despite anyone hardly using it. It's your typical large, unfinished basement with a bunch of old computers, desks, chairs, and filing cabinets all over the bloody place. The company pretty much uses it as storage, but all the electrical and air conditioning units are down here in the basement. So maintenance guys are usually the only people that come down here. When we first heard the buzzing, that's exactly what we thought. The air conditioning unit had either broken down or failed. It's been a hot summer, and the two of us preferred not to come in on Monday with no air conditioning. Not that we could have fixed it ourselves, but it'd be good to call in the problem early the next day, just to be safe. We got down to the basement and the buzzing noise was louder than ever. We headed to the back corner where the air conditioning unit was, and it seemed to be fine. But we soon realised the buzzing noise was not coming from the unit. We walked around a bit more, trying to pinpoint the location of the sound. It was super weird because at times it sounded like it was coming from inside the walls. We kept walking around but just couldn't locate it. Eventually, we made our way down to a darker part of the basement where a bunch of old shelves and boxes were stored. It was an area of the basement I'd never been to, but it seemed like the sound was originating somewhere behind a mountain of boxes. We kept making our way back into the basement, moving a few boxes and shelves out of the way to make a path for us to reach a dead end. At this point, we both had our phones out to use the flashlights since it was so dark in this corner. As I said earlier, the basement is unfinished and hardly ever used, so none of the hanging bulbs in this corner were working properly. But we had located the source of the buzzing. Wherever it was coming from, it was in this back hallway. We kept pressing our ears to the walls because, again, the buzzing sound seemed to be coming from inside of them. My buddy then decided to move out some of the boxes and shelves against the far wall to see if there was anything behind them. After shifting all this stuff out of the way and sliding the metal shelves aside, we shined our phones at the far wall and were dumbstruck by what we saw. The buzzing noise was coming from a dumbwaiter. The door to the dumbwaiter was shut, but there was no denying what it was. Next to the closed metal door was a panel with an up arrow and a down arrow. The lights for the buttons weren't lit or anything, so we assumed it wasn't functioning. It didn't strike us as strange at first because, it's just a dumbwaiter. But then we realised that there wasn't a receiving door upstairs. Nowhere in our office upstairs was a storage closet or room that would house it. This thing didn't go upstairs at all. So that's what started to intrigue us. The thing about the elevator was that it had a down arrow. We were in the basement, the bottom floor, and already underground. Where the hell did this thing even go? We were about to go upstairs when my friend hit the up arrow. The buzzing stopped immediately. There was complete silence, and he tried pressing it again, but nothing happened. Then he pressed the down arrow, and we heard the mechanical whirring a few feet above us, and then quiet rumbling from deep within the walls. It sounded like the elevator was moving downwards. After about 10 seconds, the rumbling stopped. We heard a muffled clang deep below our feet, which was probably the sound of the elevator reaching its destination. Next, we pried the safety doors of the elevator. Sure enough, there was nothing but concrete looking up the shaft. Looking down the shaft, however, was a thin cable cord that led straight down into darkness. We shut the bay doors and made our way back upstairs from the basement, without saying a word to each other. Guys, there is something below my office, and we have no idea how to get there. I won't be back in the office until Monday. I took today off, but my friend and I decided to stick my iPhone into the elevator, start a video, send it down, and see what it records. I'll keep you updated.